Happy Hanukkah! This year, Judaism Unbound is partnering for the fourth year with our friends the Torah Studio in an initiative called ApocryFest, Hanukkah Unbound and Uncanonized. We believe that Hanukkah can be a time of year where we connect to many books that were not included in the Hebrew Bible, but which nonetheless can be meaningful to Jewish individuals, communities, and the world. Through 4 conversations, we will be exploring some of these books in detail and asking big questions about what canon even means. Liana Wertman and Lexi Kohansky, both of the Torah Studio, join us for all 4 of these conversations. Learn more and sign up for our ApocryFest email list, which will be sent out throughout Hanukkah at judaismunbound.com/apocrypha. That's APOCRYPHA. Before we start, a Judaism Unbouncement that mini courses in the Onion Yeshiva, our digital center for Jewish learning and unlearning, are now open for your registration. They will begin in January, and the 4 options this time around are entitled The Torah of Kink, Hasidism and Neo-Hasidism, Brit Milah Unbound, Exploring Circumcision, and Queering Kedusha, that means holiness, through Jewish craftways. Sign up at judaismunbound.com/classes. Financial aid is available for anyone who needs it. This is a special bonus edition of Judaism Unbound, Apocrypha Today. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lex Rofberg.
I'm Liana Wertman.
And I'm Lexi Kohansky.
And it's a bittersweet day. It is a moment where we must, but also get to, close out this ApocryFest magic, this 4-part podcast series where Liana, Lexi, and I, the 3 El Migos, have been, yeah, that's terrible. They're both like snarling at me in the Zoom room. It's fine. The 3 El Migos, I'm saying it again, have been diving into sacred text that wasn't marked as sacred, but which we can mark as sacred. We hope you've had a beautiful Hanukkah observance, or observances, plural, whatever it's been, however you've been observing it. And we've got one final conversation today where we're going to dive into not a particular book of Apocrypha like we did in our second and third conversations, but instead we are going to think about and talk about what the heck we do with this now. We've been in, there's pure math and there's applied math. We've been in the pure Apocrypha, and now this episode is applied Apocrypha. What do we do to take this out into our communities, into our world? How might we take the experiences we've had reading these books and have them change us? And so we're really revved up to embody the wild, wild west that has been ApocryFest in one final conversation. But before we do, Liana, can you remind us what's going to be happening in just a few days on Sunday, December 21st? What's the deal?
Spend the last night of Hanukkah, the first night of the month of Tevet, with Judaism Unbound and Torah Studio. Whether you've listened to every single episode of Judaism Unbound ever, or this is your very first time listening, we'd love to celebrate this time of year with you. On Zoom, we're going to light some candles, we're going to play some games, and we're going to be in community. And of course, we're going to talk about Apocrypha. So if you like this episode, and honestly more if you don't, and you want to tell us about it, come and hang out with us on the 21st.
Absolutely. Please, all of the haters, join us specifically. It's going to be such a fun time. But now for our conversation on the topic at hand, applied Apocrypha, taking Apocrypha from the realm of theoretical or the realm of just, us reading it and having whatever thoughts, to what do we do with this set of texts today? Liana, Lexi, can you help us kick this off with a takeaway or two that you've had and how it might actually have the potential to transform our own Jewish lives?
One thing that I noticed about the 2 books that we've learned this year, Genesis, Apocryphon, and 4th Ezra, and is not true about all Apocrypha, they're both written primarily in the first person. And that's not really something we see all that often in other Tanakh and biblical texts, maybe in Ecclesiastes, but most of the time it's in the third person. In fact, I was teaching a few weeks ago, and there's a section of Torah where Abraham's servant is telling the story of how he met Rebekah. And it's a very long piece. And all of my students were stunned at the use of I that they were seeing in Torah. It is stunning to see the stories of our ancestors, both about ancient characters, but also the stories that our ancestors are choosing to tell after those people were in the world. To put that in the first person, as we can see with books now, really changes how we understand ourselves in that text. And these two texts offer us positions being a part of the story. I did this. I felt this. And I think that when it comes to Apocrypha, one of the things that it tends to give us is more insight into who we are as we approach texts. We can have more voices around us, similar to commentary on Torah, that allows us to have a more complex view, not only of the text in front of us, but because we have more than one opinion, we can really understand what our personal opinions and feelings are. And when we allow text to be in the first person, I feel invited right now to not just tell stories about our ancestors that continue out, that expand out from Torah, but that actually dive deeper in to each individual person, and therefore all the more so connect to me today because it's for me, right? And it's okay sometimes that these works of Apocrypha, these works outside of canon, are for the person who created them or for the person who's experiencing them. And so I feel really grateful for the opportunity to play with the first person in these texts.
Liana, the theme you're bringing in about adding a diversity of voices is actually, for me right now, a complicated question with Apocrypha. Because on one level, I totally hear what you're saying. The fact that Genesis Apocryphon plays out in a more psychologically relatable, accessible way. Things that we get as dry plot points in our Torah adds a lot of space and opens up a lot of imaginative possibilities. And on the other hand, I'm thinking about Apocrypha as a genre compared to what the rabbis were doing around the same time as these apocryphal texts are being written, which is Midrash. And we often explain Midrash kind of quickly as rabbinic fan fiction. But actually, I think that Apocrypha is more the fan fiction, meaning the canonical text exists. You've got the 6 Star Wars movies. Now you've got the 9 canon Star Wars movies. And you've got a lot of expanded universe, Star Wars novels and TV shows and media all over the place. You got your Rogue Ones, you got your Mandalorians. Anyway, this is not a Star Wars Apocrypha podcast, but it could be.
But it's not.
It's not. And of the Apocrypha we've been reading are presenting themselves as new entries into the Tanakh expanded universe. Or that they are the Tanakh universe itself. And if you think of it as an expansion, you're actually missing the point. It's the whole thing is inside the circle. Whereas Midrash does not try to be part of that canon. Midrash is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai thought Avraham was doing this. Rabbi Akiva thought Avraham was doing this other thing. And it's very explicitly people having their own takes and or traditions that fill out the story. And that's its own version of creating a diversity of voices that leaves the canon, that actually maybe makes the canon because we're not touching it. We're not messing around with it. So I'm actually I don't know what adds more voices. Is it a genre like Apocrypha that says we can add more to this and we can write new books into the canon, but they've got to be the canon. They've got to be like the canon. Or is it the genre that's that is the text we're not going to touch? And we can all have a lot of different shorter opinions and takes on what's going on inside of it. It's this tension of we find ourselves in the story by writing ourselves into the story as if we are always there. And by doing that, we have in fact always been there. Or is it, that's the story, and also here's me as myself relating to this story? They're 2 very different approaches.
Yeah. I mean, I want to reflect on the first person bit that Liana brought, but then I also really like what you're bringing about, do we treat certain texts as untouchable or do we intervene in them? That's kind of the question I'm getting. But the first person piece, the first prayer in the prayer book that I ever read and was oh, wow, this is cool. Like, I actually feel like there's something happening here. It's not just random gibberish Hebrew that I don't understand. Was when I, at summer camp, sat and looked at the words of Elohai Nitzor, which is a prayer at the end of the Amidah. It's talking about the power of speech. It says, my God, Elohai Nitzor. The reason I'm bringing it up is because it's in the first person. Elohai Nitzor, my God, guard my tongue from evil, guard my lips from speaking deceit. It goes into all these things. And then it says, Patach libi, open my heart. In a way that I don't think I could have articulated at the time. The reason that prayer was connecting to me is because it was trying to. Like the other ones, it's not that they are disinterested in me caring about them, but like they're written about God. Like, blessed are you, God. Baruch atah Adonai. Blessed are you, like you, atah. And yes, we're the ones saying it, but we're not quite present in it. And so I vibed with that prayer at the age of 8 or 9 before I really had much of a connection to any of the other prayers. And I think that is so important to have. A problem we have with Torah, with Bible, is the fact that it's not written in I voice, in me voice. It's not modeling how we could sort of do the same. Whether the do the same is fan fiction or a more submissive kind of posture to the text that's not placing it. Like the fact that we don't have, and I Lamech bada bada ba, I Noah bada bada ba, I Abraham, I Ezra, all like those are the 4 folks that we hear from in the 2 books we've looked at this time. If we had that in the text, I think the logical leap is to be like, oh, what's the I Lex? What's the I Liana? What's the I Lexi? We don't have that so much in our Bible. And so I think that's part of what leads us to not have a universe of a million different approaches to finding specifically me, I in the text. And so all that feels important to articulate, that like there is power to the first person. And Lexi, your point, there's power to the untouchable too. Davka, when something can't be messed with, when something is guarded in the art museum with a bunch of glass so that in a literal sense it is untouchable, it cannot be touched, that is alluring. Like that makes people want to see what is behind that glass. Like there's a reason why folks go to art museums and check out certain kinds of art. Like if you were to scrawl random doodles on those art pieces, that wouldn't be received so well. I think we need that too. And so I find myself landing in a place of like, most art museums I go to, they have the parts where like your hands are at your sides and you're not supposed to touch anything and you're supposed to be super deeply respectful. And I'm interested in that posture towards Jewish text. And then they also have, usually, especially contemporary museums, the part that's like, here's the community mural where we're all doodling and putting the stuff on the wall. And a lot of us enjoy that part just as much and maybe more. In Jewish tradition, we have not fostered that latter impulse as much as we fostered the former impulse. And so what Apocrypha brings is kind of a push to do that, because it itself is sort of modeling, here's somebody who wrote a book where they're actually kind of doodling in the margins of Ezra or doodling in the margins of Genesis. And I support Jewish doodling.
Lex, I think you're completely right to say that about we have made our canon into a museum that is behind glass. And I think it's a huge problem. And like you were saying in the episode about For Ezra, if I wanted to open up canon Ezra and I had a question about it, there's 2,000 years plus of Jews having answers. But there are not 2,000 years plus of Jews having and writing down and canonizing in their own rights answers about Fourth Ezra. And that generates so much creativity and calls me in to feel like I have my own direct relationship with these texts. For me personally, as a Jew, as a teacher of canon Jewish texts, I want people to relate to our texts, to our canon directly, in addition to their relationship with the thousands of years of commentaries on them, but to relate to the text directly, like we feel we don't have a block with as much when we encounter Apocrypha. And that's something I appreciate, that Apocrypha shows us what it can feel like to have an experience that is unmediated between me and the text, because there's no one standing there saying, actually, you need to go through me first.
When I do art classes, sometimes what I like to offer folks is paper plates to draw on, to play with, to cut up, to explore, not because they're less important, but because people have a different relationship with them. They feel like they're a little more malleable and they're allowed to make mistakes and to play around and to explore. And they don't create art that is less good than if they had made art on a piece of paper, but they trusted themselves a little bit more because we took down some of the barriers. And I think, Lexi, you're right. Apocrypha has, actually, that's not true. I was about to say it has fewer barriers, but I actually think it still has a lot of the same barriers. And I'm naming that for folks who might be listening to this and then going and reading, right, a Genesis Apocryphon and going, you guys made that sound really legible. The way you talked about it. And I think I want to name, coming back to what we talked about with for Ezra, the canon being an alphabet for us to read from, to learn the letters, to build words from, and to read from. And I think we see that in these. The reason they're so evocative is not just because they invite us in as first person or because they invite us in from their less intensive ways, but they also invite us in because of those two things matching up with our language about Judaism, right? When we read for Ezra's, we were like, oh my gosh, they're quoting so much. He's being so clear. He talks about, and just like Moses saw a bush, I saw a bush, and God talked to me and said, this is like Moses. You know, like they're really, really invested in the larger project. And I think that's something that matters a lot in all of this, that there is a project that we're talking about. If I don't care as much about somebody writing about this time period that has nothing to do with Judaism, that has nothing to do with our Torah, I'm like, oh, that's just a different project and a different history class that I could be taking. There's something really exciting about them using the letters of canon in a way I've never seen before. And, you know, sometimes we have to look at the pieces of art behind the glass. The glass sometimes is just because it's old and you shouldn't touch it, but not because you shouldn't be moved by it, and learn what we want to see. And then that helps us actually put it out into the world. When I see how yellow changes a painting, I'm more likely to use it in my paintings. It's about both. And you have to have both. You can't just do canon. You can't just make up your own stuff, right? It's that conversation that we're joining into that Apocrypha is definitely a part of and deserves more time in.
Ooh, I really, really enjoy getting to receive y'all's wisdom. This annual experience is really one of my favorite things that Judaism Unbound is part of. I really believe that the set of things that we're trying to be and do in the world are deeply embodied by the set of tasks that this ApocryFest experience requires. I want to say something that we haven't said super directly, which is like, Lexi, Liana, and I are not authorities by any meaningful... I mean, look, we're not experts on this. Lexi, you actually did say at one point, like, everything I know about For Ezra, I got from Jewish Annotated Apocrypha. Jewish Annotated Apocrypha is a great resource. I hope folks will get it. But like, yeah, the three of us read these texts very recently. We sort of self-authorized. We self-charged ourselves to be allowed to bring hot takes about those texts into the world. And look, do we have background in other Jewish texts? Yes, we do. And we've spent time playing with different modalities of learning from those texts, so I think we're comfortable doing that. But it feels important to say that, like, truly, in a way, even beyond when we're talking about other more canonized texts, these are new to us. We are talking out of our asses, but in like a holy way. We are doing something that I think is so important and which I hope all of you listening will also do, which is uncover the Torah that's there in the things you're reading, in the text you're reading. Like, we could ask the question, like, does Apocrypha refer to a set of books that are a certain amount of years old and that have a certain articulable relationship to Jewish communities? Like, yes, I can point to XYZ community in the 200s or 300s. I mean, Liana, you mentioned like the Italian Jews were interested in Megillat Antiochus, and like that sort of helps us count it as Apocrypha. Part of me wants to say that Apocrypha can be almost any text we're reading and sort of trying to generate meaning from Jewishly. We are truly beginner's mind on all of this. And Apocrypha levels the playing field so that kind of all of us are to some degree in beginner's mind. Even the scholars who have spent their lives studying this, when I talk to them, they're usually experts in like one or two books, and they're like, wait, I have to go back and look at Genesis Apocrypha. Like, I forget what the deal is. Like, that's a gift. And it reminds us that at the end of the day, we're all learning. We're all beginners, and we can all, despite that, but not even despite that, because of that, generate the Torah that our world needs.
I feel very grateful to have learned with you, and I appreciate you bringing in that this is, I mean, Lex, I will say this is our 4th year doing this, so I feel like we're getting closer to a little past beginner.
We're seniors in high school, I guess.
We're seniors in high school.
It's our 4th year.
We're going to prom.
Prom's coming up.
And I think that, I mean, I'm just remembering when we first started talking about this, that was exactly the goal, was that you and I both love Jewish texts and love approaching them. And Lexi, I know this is true for you as well, but we love approaching them, not assuming we know everything about them. And that's really hard for a lot of people, especially teachers or people we want to be our teachers. We're like, oh, you'll have the answers. I want you to have answers. I want to find answers. And there's something really essential to explorations of text that don't require us to have answers of them, that don't say, this is exactly what this means, and this is how we understand this, and this is why it's important to us. Engaging with Apocrypha allows us to expand what we think holiness is, allows us to have a deeper understanding of our place in the world as Jews and within Judaism. And I think it gives us opportunities to, even if we're not trying to write whole new books of canon, to think that there are many, many more stories than what we get in a canon. And that was always supposed to be true. We were not supposed to be shut out of the canon. We just can only put so many books on a bookshelf. You know what I mean? Like, there's just a moment where you have to say, stop, I can't afford another book. And anyone listening to this podcast knows that you never actually hit that point. You just find a cheaper version of that book. But again, engaging with the canon is something that is less closed, or more porous, rather, even if it is whole.
I have something slightly controversial and something much more controversial that I want to say. But before either of those, I just have loved learning with both of you. It's such a gift to get to spend time on these texts and on any texts and in this world with Liana and Lex. Shout back to the 3 El Amigos, 1 for L and L for 1.
Whoa! And El is, of course, a Hebrew name for God. So the El Amigos is...
1 for L?
Did we just solve the puzzle of Jewish life? Did we?
This is the new Shema. 1 for L and L for all.
Amen.
Oh my God. Okay, I don't know that I'm going to be more controversial than that. But one thing I wanted to say was that there's this incredible synchronicity that I had before I recorded these podcasts, like a couple days earlier. I was having this conversation with my mom, who's a geneticist, and she was telling me about the way that in a species population, there are genes that individuals have that do not get expressed unless there is some extraordinary condition that comes about. Example, plants live in a warm environment. Some of those plants might be able to tolerate the cold a little better, but we don't know about that until suddenly there's a cold snap and some of those plants have their cold survival gene that was hidden activated, and they're able to survive. And the fact that there are these secret genes that only come up under certain conditions contributes to the ability of the species as a whole to survive. And the name for that concept is cryptic variation. As in Apocrypha, as in there is a way in which Apocrypha is our...
the crypt.
Apocrypha, cryptic variation. It's all hidden variation, and diversity creates resilience and an ability to survive more kinds of situations and changes in worlds than we thought that we could have. We have more in ourselves than we were told that we are. That's cryptic variation, and that's what reading Apocrypha could maybe do for us. It's let us know that we are more than we thought we were, based on the books that have been expressed on our bookshelf, based on the genes that have been expressed in our lives. The second thing I wanted to say was calling back to Lex, what you were saying, which I'm so grateful for you naming, is that we are coming to these conversations view me and Liana as beginners in Apocrypha, and we are out here authorizing ourselves to talk about it. It can be really hard for us living in a time where we are exposed to so many voices, to so many different opinions, to so many takes on what the truth is. It can be hard for us to have the courage of our convictions, to even be willing to have a take that is actually our own and not just what someone else told us or what we think will make other people happy if we say, on social media or in our friend groups or wherever it may be. It's hard for us to know what we actually feel and what the divine spark inside of us is calling us to know and to put out in the world. And I just appreciate that reading Apocrypha has given us this opportunity to say, we are not experts. We're not necessarily claiming to have convictions about Apocrypha, but we are people who are practicing trusting our intuitions when we have an encounter with a text. Because that is the only thing we can do with Apocrypha. And if we don't choose to trust ourselves when we read Apocrypha, then we will just not be able to get anything out of it. So it's really a ride or die situation with Apocrypha in a way that's like less true Torah. You can rely on a commentary. But here, you get to know what it is that's really in your heart, because that's the only thing you have when encountering a really hard text like Genesis Apocryphon. And I hope that people will practice saying that stuff, talking about those things with each other. And I also hope that practicing that, tuning in to what your heart is telling you, and being vulnerable in sharing those things will also change the way you can show up in bigger conversations and current conversations about like things that really matter for us today, and all the conversations about what kind of society do we want to have? What kind of practice do we want to live? Make all those things broader, because we will know ourselves better by doing it. And that's what Apocrypha can do for you.
Absolutely. Wow. Thanks again to the two of you. Thanks to everyone out there for listening. On that last piece, I really am reminded every year as I encounter these new to me texts. It's also a really good practice for those of us who are, like, for our professional lives, for our jobs, working in Jewish life. Because you know what happens when I encounter Genesis Apocryphon and I read through it and I'm like, oh my gosh, what even? Like, what's happening? There's all this unspoken stuff. There's literal gaps. Like, I'm reminded of that experience that a ton of people have with our canon. They open up Genesis or Exodus or Leviticus or Numbers or Deuteronomy, and they have that feeling too. And they're not wrong to have it. It is, in fact, a really challenging text to navigate through if you haven't spent a lot of time with it and many years of your life and know where to look for those commentaries. Like, it is hard. I hope that those of you out there listening who are comfortable with more traditional texts, if you haven't yet dove in and gone to the actual, Genesis Apocryphon text and 4 Ezra, I hope you will, because it's like, I don't want to say it's humbling. Like, that feels like the wrong way to describe it, but it's like, it's a helpful reminder that, like, we have this in us. We have that confused person that wants a collaborator, a learner, a co-learner. Like, the two of you helped me understand these texts much better as well, because you noticed things that I didn't. That's all really, really fundamentally important to our Jewish communities. So thanks to all of you for listening. On the front of trusting your convictions, and none of us are fully experts, you and your hot takes are just as expert as ours. So that means we really want to receive them in our email inboxes in whatever ways you can contact us. So Facebook and Instagram handles at Judaism Unbound and at Torah Studio for those. You can email us at lex@judaismunbound.com, Lexi at thetorastudio.org, and Liana, Liana, at thetorastudio.org. We're so grateful if you do. We'd love to hear your visions about Apocrypha beyond just Hanukkah, about how these texts might have what to offer us and our world. So thank you again for being along for the ride or die ride. And with that, this has been Judaism Unbound.